Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Shara Weinsberg. I am here with the PR team, having a dialogue with the policy team at CSD. Tonight we're going to have a virtual spotlight tour, and we have a few things that are in store. So far we have some participants who are joining virtually. So they're from the comfort of wherever they're at. We have this set up tonight through Zoom, through a webinar, and we have a 20-second delay. So when you type in comments or questions, just know that we do have a little bit of a delay in the responses for our CSD panel for the questions. So we're actually going to hold the questions until the end as far as responding. We will be reading your questions though and have answers for you at the end. Tonight's topic is employment. And do you know that in the United States, the rate of deaf people who are underemployed or unemployed is about 70%. CSD believes that that number is much too high. And CSD wants to do something about it. So here we are introducing CSD CEO, Chris Sukup, to talk more about a few of the things we've got in store. Good evening. Thank you everybody for joining tonight. From the beginning, CSD has really been committed to supporting the deaf community. As a nonprofit organization, that's been our focus the entire time. In the beginning, for much of our history, CSD has been focused on addressing barriers in communication access, and then being able to achieve support in overcoming those barriers. We did TRS, which is TTY relay service, IP relay, later VRS, video relay service, captioning telephones, interpreting services, have all been part of CSD since the beginning. Equipment distribution program, and all of those to help deaf people overcome the barriers for communication access, information access that is integral to participating in the whole. Helping little through little, we realized that communication access alone by itself wouldn't achieve the life experience that we want for our deaf community. So there needs to be more to help us achieve that. And as the world becomes more and more accessible and people have access to communication information, and relay for the deaf community has stayed the same. And the high rate of unemployment and the high rate of underemployment and the economy oppression within the deaf community. So clearly the communication access by itself doesn't solve the challenge. There's more necessary. So because of that, CSD has been making the shift and exploring other avenues to support and benefit the deaf community. This year, we've been focusing on employment. We recognize that there are fundamental challenges within the way that deaf people are perceived out in the world. And that perception can maybe be a perception of deaf person is on the spectrum of the deaf identity, deaf abilities, what maybe a deaf person has to give. There's a lot of misunderstandings with that and misperceptions. The idea of a disability becomes part of creating a national dialogue about disability. And that the purpose of the word then impacts the way that individuals are perceived. So how do we change that? How do we change the way that deaf individuals are perceived and how the way that the community perceives the ability for contribution and what we have to offer the world? How do we change that? I think the answer is through success stories. The more we can do, the strength and showing the evidence through our job creations, then the more we can impact that perception. And the strength in numbers, the deaf identity in the world. So everything that CSD does to impact and be involved and address employment issues, and tonight we're going to be talking about 3 programs that we have specifically: CSD Works, CSD Learns, and our newest social venture fund. So there are unique solutions engineered to help opportunities for more deaf success and for them to be successful in the workspace, for them to be successful in small business ownership, to support those who are interested in creating their own businesses and who are interested and motivated to hire deaf people. We are really excited to share more tonight and happy to answer your questions later towards the end. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, so much for joining us. Now we want to introduce Faye Kuo. She is our legal person. So welcome to join us, Faye. Well, not sure. Just a second. Faye Kuo is going to be joining us, and she's going to talk about our social venture fund shortly. And then we would like to introduce Bobby Siebert. He's from CSD Neighborhood, CSDN. Hey, thanks, Shara. I'm here representing CSD Works tonight. My name's Bobby Siebert. I'm the development manager for CSD Neighborhood. And we call ourselves the heart of CSD, which is a nonprofit company. CSD Neighborhood provides support services and tries to overcome challenges that deaf community faces with work. CSD Works specifically does that. What CSD Works is a national program created as a solution to help deaf people who are unemployed and underemployed. The challenge isn't just one thing that has an easy solution. There are all sorts of different factors in there of why deaf people find it challenging to find jobs or are underemployed. We're trying to have a one-stop center, a one-stop hub for employers and qualified candidates and combine them together into one center. So the employers who have jobs available, who want to advertise to the deaf and hard of hearing community, can have a pipeline of applicants at this one-stop shop. At the same time, we'll be supporting those employers because sometimes they have anxiety. They're not sure about hiring a deaf or hard of hearing person. Maybe they've never met a deaf person before. So they don't understand their abilities and they don't know that they can actually do the job. So we provide them support through a workplace solution, and we have various trainings, and we are able to hire people and show them how it could work in that environment and show them how a deaf person would succeed in that environment, how to use ASL interpreters, how to set up meetings to make sure that the deaf person is actually included in the meeting, understanding deaf culture, ASL as a language, all of these things that the deaf community already knows as a part of us, but a lot of employers were completely clueless about. So we provide those resources to help them to be comfortable in hiring deaf people or hard of hearing people to become successful in their workplace. Now, for the job seekers, deaf candidates, it's sometimes a challenge finding the skills and education and experience to grow and be ready to get the job that they want. A lot of the time, the challenge is the language because they learn best through ASL, but where are the opportunities for education and learning in ASL? There aren't very many. So Joseph Santini, we've looked at him and he is going to talk more about CSD Works, our training program. Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Bobby. We're going to go ahead and let Faye talk first, and then we will switch to have you and Joseph, and then all three of us will be on here talking. So once we get all three of them on, we'll kind of merge the efforts and go on to that. Okay? All right. Thank you. Faye, you want to come back on?
Great. Hi. That was odd time there. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for joining us. This is Faye Kuo, and I just wanted to have you talk a little bit about what the Total Venture Fund, SVF, is. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So SVF provides a mix of capital, cash, basically, money, resources to encourage the growth of those who are deaf and hard of hearing and their business ideas. And so how that works is we figure out the business needs, either cash needed or legal assistance or advertisement, any of those kind of resources. We try to figure out what their needs are, and we provide a program of cash or resources designed to fit their particular needs. We try to avoid a fixed formula because not every business is the same. Their needs are different. So there are several whys behind SVF. There are two that actually stand out the most, two that are the most important to us. The first one is with the fight against the under and unemployed rates of people who are deaf and hard of hearing, to self-empowerment ways of doing business for themselves. Two, providing an environment that is completely 100% accessible for those who are deaf and hard of hearing. And so to business people, so that they can focus on the resources and then they have access rather than worrying about, how are we going to communicate like for hearing people? And so they can figure out how to focus on what they need to develop to make their business successful. So matching the two whys really leads to our core belief that SVF, an investment in that, will create more jobs for other deaf and hard of hearing people, because once there's a deaf owner, they understand the challenges of communications and needs for that type of access to an environment. So then they'll hire other deaf people. And so that way, deaf employees will be able to focus on their work, improve their skills, and contribute more so than worrying about how they're going to be able to communicate.
Wonderful. Very exciting. So what are the future plans for SVF?
So I think our goal is to host a round of funding once a year, including in 2018, which is coming up soon. And that will be more like an open call for business proposals from the community, similar to what we just went through a few months ago. And so But with that said, we do believe that there may be times out of that, schedule of time for fundraising that maybe it might be appropriate for SVF to make investments in individuals and their business ideas. So it may happen during that round, but definitely it will be ongoing.
Great. Thank you, Faye. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I just think this is a wonderful way to contribute and encourage and provide growth for those who are deaf and hard of hearing, those individuals, to succeed in going into business for themselves, to show that deaf people can.
Wonderful. Thank you. So now, if you have any questions for Faye, go ahead and send us over to us, and we will bring back Bobby and bring on Joseph now. This is Joseph Santini and David. We have some questions here. So first off, so tell us your name, what you're about, what you do.
Sure, yeah. I'll go ahead and start. My name's Joseph Santini, and I'm the program manager for CSD Learns. And what that is, it's an online learning management system designed by deaf people for the deaf community. Our goal really is to break down barriers to education for the deaf community. So right now, our system has been running for almost a year now. We have some new courses available to support the deaf community in their employment ventures.
Wonderful. David, do you have anything you wanted to comment?
Sorry. Yes, there's a few that we're working with the Capital Association, members of Congress, to educate them about people who are deaf and hard of hearing and the challenges that they face in the workplace, to try to find solutions, which we'll talk about one specific program that I'm working on later. And secondly, I've been working probably for quite some time teaching deaf communities about politics, news events, current events, those things that are related to people who are deaf and hard of hearing, to empower them to make their voices heard and take action on a variety of issues.
Great. So Bobby, did you have anything else that you wanted to add about yourself? Questions before we start questions for you guys? Nah, just start with the questions. I'm good. Okay, Joseph, we're going to start with you. How can people apply for CSD Learns?
Well, I think it's important to consider education and how that relates to employment. So CSD Learns, the first time we've had online learning management system where you can see information presented actually in ASL with captioning and voices, but it's bilingual technology on online education. So we're now providing more and more courses for people to be able to take at a self-pace. So if you're a high school student, maybe in a mainstream program, and you don't have language models in school in ASL, suppose you're at home and you just recently graduated college, but you're still wanting to learn a little bit more. So maybe you're an older person who's maybe transitioning to a new job. Well, you could benefit from courses through CSD Learns. And that's some of our goal, is just to make more topics available to the deaf community that people have not had access to in the past. For example, business and financial information and education, different topics that will help the deaf community advance themselves.
So great, so great. Very exciting. What else does CSD Learns do to approach the and underemployment rate?
Good question. Well, we originally started focusing on, the first course was called Work Benefits. The first course was important because people throughout the United States who are deaf receive benefits for a variety of reasons. So when we started thinking about the workplace, that sometimes becomes a challenge or a barrier. People want to say, earn benefits at work and work full time. Well, there are specific rules there, things that you can't accept a certain amount of money. You've got to fill out specific forms and information with Social Security and other benefit management systems. So oftentimes people who are deaf get information that's in English, which is not their first language. And so this is a self-taught course, and who teaches it is a benefits counselor who is deaf, Melanie Taylor, and provides direct information for the deaf community. And that's how they can navigate the benefit system and actually start working without being burdened with debt. So it's a great opportunity for people who are deaf to transition into the working world. That's just one example how we are supporting people with employment issues.
Awesome example. So what other courses can you tell us about? And can you share with people so they know what CSD Learns has to offer?
Yeah, good question. So we now have 7 courses on CSD Learn, more are coming soon. Our first courses are typically focused on employment-related issues. For example, there's researching a resume, searching for a job, process of the job interview, things like that. So right now we're trying to add more financial related courses because that's an important topic to the deaf community. So I've been working closely with a man named Mark Apadaka. He's a nationally known deaf financial person, and so his responsibility is try to increase the deaf community's knowledge about financials and investments. And so the first course we want to introduce is banking basics and just an introduction to financial skills. So we'll soon be releasing 2 financial courses, one related to investments and how people can get involved in the investment process, and the second one related to debt. How can we better manage our debt issues and increase their financial lives? So I've seen a lot of courses pop up, and CSD Learns is providing something called Teachable Moments. And that's nice because it's a course focused on specific issues that are important, new concepts that have come up in the deaf community. One recently that just came out talked about privilege. And so that's a great topic, and the deaf community is becoming more and more aware. We're starting to, take a look at ourselves and trying to figure out and trying to understand that concept of privilege. So we have a short video that explains the idea behind that concept. So it's a great opportunity to spread knowledge throughout our deaf community in the United States.
That seems like it will be very beneficial. Can you tell us how the people can take the courses? How can people sign up? What's the website? Where do they go find the CSD Learns?
Oh, sure. Yes, people can right now go ahead and type learns.csd.org and go ahead and register through the computer. So we're working on, you can start doing that right now. Once you've registered, you can then choose and pick different courses to enroll. And after registration, you can also have the information on a mobile device. And soon we'll be adding more mobile features. That's to come, but right now you've got to register through the desktop first. So it's free for anyone. There are no charges or costs to it. You can sign up right now.
So basically, anybody knows out there who might want this information, it runs the gamut. I just wanted to add something about the courses themselves. Most of the time, people think online courses means I register for it, I learn about it, and then that's it. But Learns courses are different. It's very beneficial. It's for schools and organizations. Learns is it's very user friendly, and it's online. You just need an internet connection and a laptop. It works with mobile devices as well. So we have schools who've been using it in their transition programs for students who are about to graduate and who are seeking work. They need to learn those job skills, and they're using CSD Learns for some of their courses. So we support organizations and service providers as well. Sometimes they might not have an ASL fluent person and they feel like they can't provide a training. They use CSD Works to provide that training for deaf and hard of hearing students in the classroom. It can be very beneficial. Oh, thank you for Bobby, for your perspective on that. Let's see, Bobby, we wanted to talk with you about CSD Works and the Career Center and what all that entails and what the deaf community can expect from that. Great. CSD Works has a career center, and it's the hub that brings employers and individuals together. And we have an online job board. Like I said, it's a center. It creates opportunities for employers to be able to advertise and pull in deaf and hard of hearing candidates. Sometimes deaf and hard of hearing candidates lack skills, and then this connects them with those skills to be able to pick up those skills. Earlier, Chris talked about changing the perspective, changing the perception that the world has on deaf people. And I feel like CSD Works is doing that. We're finding companies who have shown that they can be successful having deaf people work for them. So we're sharing those success stories with the employers and with the deaf community. So that's part of the center of that and some of our solutions. Now, how we provide the services to the deaf and hard of hearing job seekers is we actually won a grant. It's called the Virtual Job Club. And for that grant, we are figuring out where the gaps are in the deaf community, what the challenges are, and trying for rehabilitation services, commonly known as DOR or VR. They have reports annually. And they have over 11,000 deaf and hard of hearing clients throughout the United States. And then some of them are successful in job placement services and some of them aren't. They have something called a job seekers assistance that helps them with resume writing, interview skills, finding jobs. And the deaf consumers who have taken those get jobs 65% of the time, but the others who hadn't taken those get jobs 45% of the time. So there's an improvement in the chance of the outcome of getting a job. So less than 1 in 5 people got the services though. Why? So we talked with different states at different DORs at state levels, and there was a variety of reasons, but most of the time they couldn't provide ASL-based services. So we figured out a way how to provide those ASL services through a virtual job club. So we use Joseph's network, and we use a video conferencing through web devices, and it makes it so that candidates can have a deaf job coach and everything's in sign language. They're able to get those resume writing classes and interview skills and how to write a cover letter. Everything is in the process of this whole 6-week course that they then leave and graduate from and have a portfolio that helps them get a job. Job Club is coming in 2018. Okay, so there will be more information coming out in 2018, huh? We look forward to that for sure. Yes. What else can you talk about, other things that CSD Works and CSD Learns is doing? Joseph, do you want to share?
Sure. Just add a little bit about the webinars. It's important to talk about right now with today's technology, how that can impact people's ability to find jobs and get promotions. You know, with professional development, that's very important in this generation. So a largest percentage of professional development can be provided through online services. I'm sure many of you have taken webinars online through different services. There's a lot of webinars that are not visually friendly or friendly for a person who's deaf-blind or someone who's trying to catch all the information. It typically is just a wall of text, which you might have a very nice PowerPoint, but that's not really successful for the deaf community. So people join those services and typically give up. And so we're trying to participate and with this work club develop some webinars where everything is visual. So that's a new approach for us. We haven't seen availability of that through online programs before. So we'll be sharing that with others, talking with individual groups and sessions and getting together again. So we're looking forward to see how people experience that new course as far as what benefit we provide. And then also just to be able to get together through the internet, through a diversity of people throughout the United States. It can benefit job seekers in the community.
Definitely looking forward to getting more information about that and out into the community. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it so much. Now we're going to turn the time over to David. You want to go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself and what it is that you're doing for employment?
Sure. One of the most important things to address in employment challenges is creating opportunities. And CSD has different groups that are all working on a variety of things to create opportunities. CSD Works, CSD Learns, SVF. But as far as policy, we need to look to see where we can affect change in policy to create more opportunities for jobs. And knowing that the unemployment, for our community, the employment opportunities aren't great. And the 2016 statistics from the Department of Labor shows only 17.9% of people have jobs who have disabilities that are now currently working. The rest either are unemployed, meaning they're out looking and can't find work, or they're not in the labor force at all. They're not even looking. And so the Department of Labor has a lot more statistics to help us better understand where we can make a difference. They did a study a few years ago, and they found some interesting statistics. It said that people who have disabilities are twice as likely to set up their own business. Twice as likely. Reason being is because it's easier for them to just set up their own business than be rejected through applying at jobs. So just making their own job opportunities, creating those opportunities. That was wonderful information. So now we're seeing opportunities to create jobs, to support job creation. So the government agency, the Small Business Administration, SBA for short, was established quite some time ago. The reason they were created was to get job opportunities to groups of people who they have considered underemployed or unemployed, who have challenges finding jobs compared to the general public. World War II, men coming back from the war, women who were close to the war working in factories, there was an increase in unemployment. And so Congress passed the Small Business Act to basically give women-owned businesses opportunities to compete for federal contracts. The federal government is a very large contracting business. There's millions and millions of dollars spent there every year. It's a huge opportunity. So the Small Business Act said, if you're a woman-owned business, and you go out for different contracts, different competitors, you'll be actually placed closer to the top of the list, and you'll have a better opportunity to win the bid to win that contract. So that helped many business owners owned by women to get contracts from the federal government. Later, they added different groups. After Vietnam, they added veterans. Reason being is veterans came back from war and found it very difficult to find employment. And so they added veterans to the mix. And they also added service disabled veterans. So they kept adding different groups who would get benefit from bidding for federal contracts. They'd move up in ranks and have better opportunities to win those contracts, create jobs, create revenue, hire other vets, hire other women. But the one group that has been missing and hasn't benefited from this important program, people with disabilities, was deaf and hard of hearing people. They weren't able to benefit. So 2016, there was only 17.9% of these people who had jobs. In the general category, there's only 60%, over 60%, I think close to 65% that have jobs. And we're 17.9. So the opportunities are there. So we're now partnering with different members of Congress, having discussions about creating a bill to add people with disabilities to the SBA program to become federal contractors to be able to set up businesses. So if there's contracts available and someone who has a disability bids, then they're able to gather revenue, hire other people with disabilities, and create more jobs. So we're pursuing that opportunity. It's important not only for the contract itself, but also there's other hidden benefits. SBA has different programs. There's the Business Resource Center, and that is to provide resources and education, how to create a business, how to fill out tax forms, how to hire employees, how to manage those employees. So writing a business plan, all of those resources are available. People with disabilities don't have those services. So if they were added to the group, maybe there would be ASL resources. So it's important to have the perspective from a person who's disabled, where they're coming from, to better help with those resources. Secondly, there's a council, which is important because the council is a group of people, advisors, that are nonpartisan. They're not Republican, not Democrat. They gather and they talk about the different policies that can be established to help that specific business. There's a council for women-owned businesses, for veteran-owned businesses. Well, we want to add one for those that are disabled-owned business, disability-owned businesses. So policies created specifically for Congress, for the president, through the SBA, the Small Business Administration. All of that together, I think this would be a wonderful opportunity here to, encourage opportunities for people who are disabled to create their own businesses.
So then how would people from the community be able to get support from that?
Great question. Well, right now we're talking with different members. It's important for them to hear from the community that this is very important to them. And so we're encouraging them to go ahead and contact their members, saying, we want people with disabilities to be added to the SBA. We could benefit from that program. We're providing the language and the link as far as where they can contact. That will soon be placed on our website under public policies. So it'll talk more about that there, we're hoping.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to some questions that we've been receiving from our audience. David, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we switch over to that? David, did you want to add anything else?
Nope. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a question. Let's see. Okay, what do we have here? All right. The question is for David. And Kristen Lee is asking if you could explain a little bit about how it is that we could deal with these policy issues having to do with underemployment and unemployment, how can the community support in different ways other than the SBA?
Yes. Good. Thank you, Kristen. Good question. SBA is important. We can provide information as how to be involved with the SBA, but as far as other things, we will be releasing information about target policies that come up, target bills, or target federal rules that might soon be happening and voted upon. So we can send that out and get people involved, and that will become more of a, something that comes up in the next few months. Like I said, we're going to set up that public policy hub, a central place to gather information for different policies and information. As far as including everything, probably not, but we're hoping to have a fairly good list so you can see what issues are coming up and what it relates to, how it affects the community, and how you can get involved, and how you can contact your representative or contact a federal agency to share your opinion. Make a difference that way. It's funny, yesterday I think it was, I was reading, there was a congressional race in Virginia, and the House of Delegates, you have the House of Representatives and U.S. Congress. Same principle idea in Virginia. They had the House of Delegates. Well, the last person that was competing won by one vote. So the House of Delegates is now equal, 50-50, because of that one vote. So that's just one example how important one voice can be. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's important to be involved and share your opinion and express your ideas to whoever is making decisions that impact you and your life and your community. So I'm hoping we're going to have more for you soon to empower you to get involved.
Awesome. We have another question for you, David. Will CSD be partnering with other organizations such as NAD, a National Employment Resource Center, etc., to make sure that there aren't duplicate efforts in making sure that we all have the same goal in mind?
Yes, we meet with different advocacy groups like NAD, TDI, ALDA, HLAA. There's a variety that we meet with regularly, and we share information with each other, what we're doing. And so us at CSD, we're leading the employment task force for the different consumer groups. I think we have 8 different groups involved in that task force. So we've created a list of different ways that we can make an impact on employment issues. And so we're continuing to lead that task force. We meet regularly and we share what's going on, things that have happened and things that are coming up, and different support providing to each other. Everyone's leading different issues and then we support them. So the overlap is basically very minimal. The National Council on Disabilities is another, how do I say it? It's a government group, an advisory body that talks about different issues related to disabilities, whether it's employment or accessibility issues. Their knowledge about our work, but their ability to support that is very limited to, just basically providing recommendations to the president and to Congress. But, sometimes they're in negotiation with us and different agencies, but their ability to support is very limited compared to us advocacy groups being involved in the communities and being able to get things done. So again, the National Labor Resource Council, their purpose, really, their strategy is a little different than ours. For example, the purpose of our group is to advise them what they can do to change policy and improve outcomes for people who have disabilities. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, so we have one more question for David. And then we have a few questions for some others. So this is from Donald Moore. And Donald says, are we as the community able to join into this task force? Or is this only an internal to CSD thing?
Great question. The reason why we created the task force just recently, let's see, I think it's been about a year and a half ago, was to document different recommendations during the presidential race with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So we sent recommendations to both, hoping that they would, become elected officials and then have a blueprint from us as far as what we needed to happen to make a difference. So we predict we'll do the same thing and continue to talk about what, strategies and priorities and new information needs to be shared. So I would be glad to include you if you're interested. Send me your name and your information to CSD, and we can sure add you to the list and call you when it's time. Thanks for your interest.
Great. Thank you, David. Now we have a question for Bobby. Okay. It's from Jim Bishop, and they said, I'm just wondering, okay. What obstacles that are the deaf community facing that you're trying to approach? You meaning are obstacles for finding employment? I think so. General, and then other, like, what are deaf facing obstacles, and then what are employers facing as well, as far as searching for candidates? First, I'll start with the deaf community for individual job seekers. Starting with access to training and education, acquiring the skills that are needed to find a job that's equivalent to what we want. Research shows that the deaf community's employment rate is low, and it's low compared to the general population. And the more education you acquire, the closer it gets to being on par with with the normal population or hearing population. So if you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you're getting even more closer, like you're closing in on that gap. So we feel like this gets us on an even playing field and provides the resources and empower deaf people to get the skills that they need to be able to be competitive for jobs, to give them the background, the certification, the experience that they need to get those jobs. Now, on the employer side, there's a few different things. Chris talked about perception of deaf people's abilities. They've never met a deaf person before. They have no idea how communication is going to work. So they're worried about cost of accommodations and different barriers. So dealing with that, we have to develop a relationship with the employers to be a bigger part of CSD Works, and we go out and get a hold of employers and create that dialogue with them and make a case as to why deaf people are worth hiring, and that the community isn't just okay to hire, but that it actually makes business sense to hire deaf people. Their loyalty, their work ethic, the retention, that they're gonna not leave. You're not gonna be having to hire a new person because most likely they're gonna stay. Throughout the United States, there's a lot of spending for people with disabilities that they know once they get hired, they're going to stay there. So it makes business sense for businesses to hire deaf and hard of hearing people. We're out there contacting different employers and getting that information out to try to reduce that perception and misunderstanding and stigma that this is such an added undue cost. So we're always going about it in different approaches in different ways. We try to strategize and collaborate with the USBLN, which is the United States Business Network. And there are Fortune 500 companies who are all committed to hiring people with disabilities and supporting them and being inclusive. And we went to this conference just a few months ago, and I was amazed at how the employers were excited. They were motivated. They wanted to hire people with disabilities. They wanted to hire deaf and hard of hearing people. They said they were fine with these accommodations. They wanted to be inclusive. And we realized that they needed the diversity in the workplace. So we started getting a hold of various companies to work with us, and they were telling us of the jobs that they had for deaf and hard of hearing people. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, that does. That's wonderful. I have a question for Joseph here. It's again from Jim Bishop. He's wondering, he says that it would be nice to have a deaf mentor program. Is there something that CSD has in the works for that maybe there would be mentors that they could hook up a deaf mentor with a mentee?
Great question. Interesting that you say that, because Bobby just mentioned that virtual work club, employment club. So that's a great place to start, because that is where we will have one-on-one counseling as well as group counseling. So I think it's important to remember a lot of people who are deaf right now in the United States live isolated in isolated areas, maybe not large cities or towns. There's one here and one there. And so it's really important to establish a situation where deaf people have access through some kind of connection to a mentor who can provide counseling and give advice as far as the best way to get a job or study and plan for the future, just a variety of things. So oftentimes hearing students and hearing adults, they have better access to mentors than people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So, you know, with our online age, it gives us equal access to those services. So right now we're in the process. We are looking at someone who's coming from a specific field to teach specific courses. We're developing English courses. So, you know, we want to hire an English professor. So we get in contact with these professors with the goal to provide online support and networking for all of the deaf community in different fields. So some of those, maybe deaf authors, could get on CSD and support each other in their independent contract fields. And so that's just one idea of mentoring that could happen in CSD Learns.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we're gonna have one more question. We have time for one more question. And it's for anybody who wants to participate. You can come on, Faye or Chris, you can join in. So the question is from Jade Lissa. And the question is, how can we successfully measure our contributions to economic growth here in America? And how can we identify our deaf economic contribution and progress? Great. That's a fantastic question. To start, one of the big challenges is really the lack of having the ADA about in the community and relay for the community, employment, economy, the level of education, where they're employed, the dream, where it's going. There's just so much information that we need that's not there. It's not there or available, and we need to change that. So as we go into 2018, we're going to be spreading more information about this program. It's going to be coming out, and the goal is to collect information from the community. We want to better understand the obstacles. We want to better understand what our goals are. And oftentimes, we send out information about employment and then there's not really one solution for this employment issue. There's a lot of obstacles that we face, and we all need to work together to try to overcome these obstacles and challenges. So once we have the data, we'll be able to set up maybe a database or something and come up with some measurements later. And we'll have deaf-owned businesses. And with the deaf-owned businesses, they'll be hiring deaf people and trying to build a cooperative partnership with the government and with government agencies and spreading more resources out for training and development. And then again, we'll have the opportunity to compare and measure again. So we'll have a baseline that then we can determine if where we're going is making a positive impact or if there's additional things that we need to do together. Again, I emphasize that we need to do all of this together because in order to have the successful outcome, that it's all part of our community. Beautifully said. Do we have any other thoughts? Does anybody else want to join? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much to the panel, and thank you for you in the community, our audience, joining us tonight. We're going to wrap up our first ever virtual spotlight tour. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any feedback, please go ahead and shoot us a Facebook inbox message, and we would be happy to hear your thoughts. Maybe what it is that we can do to improve, how we can make things better. Even if you have other questions or ideas, send them all over our way and we would be happy to answer. We are committed to the community and we love serving the community and being involved. So thank you so much and keep following us on Facebook and look forward to our upcoming CSD things and find us on csd.org. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.